What I'm going to do next is take off this plate and have a look at servicing this board first, because I think this is where the main problems are lying with the power supply issues. There's quite a lot of capacitors under there. I did take a picture of that, so I'll show you there. But it's quite simple to dismantle. Effectively, you've got your two output chips here. We're just going to take these screws off. And then we've just got a centre screw. That should now give us access to lift this away. Ta-da! And we can now start looking at this board. We'll take the 4 screws out that hold it in place, disconnect these connectors, and we should be able to just lift the whole board away. Small cable clip holder there, I think we're going to have to take that off. Hopefully without cutting in the wires. I'll take these connectors off. I like to put a little mark on them, just so I know where they've come from. And I think there's a couple more we've got to take off. Down here. I'm not sure where they go to. I think they go into this loom. So I'll get on with that. But then, as you can see, we've got full access to the board. So we can start looking at that board and also the switches down below. So I'm going to start testing a few components and see if we can find anything that's faulty. There's quite a lot of caps on there. I want to change these caps around these main power output amplifiers, and also change the heatsink compound on there. So that's my next job really now, is take a few caps off, test them, test diodes, resistors, whatever I can see really that looks a bit suspect. Well, we've changed the caps on this main board. I decided to change them all. I did test them and they did test okay, the ones I took off, so I know there's nothing wrong with those. Tested all the transistors, tested the variable resistors down here, they're all okay. So what I did, I downloaded the data sheet for the LA440, which I'll show you now. And I found a diagram that's typically similar to what we're doing. And on the board, I've traced through pin 2, which is the input. And it basically traces down through a capacitor there, down, round here, and out onto these 3 wires here. And the same for the other device, just straight down through a capacitor and down onto this pin, which are these three wires here. And then these 3 wires go down to this board, which is the sort of control board for the volume and the switching of which circuits are switching in and out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that board out. Obviously I've lifted that board out. Also lifted this board out just to get it out of the way. And the other board is quite simple to get out. It's just when you rotate this over, there's a screw there, and then these 4 pots. There's a nut that needs removing. So we'll just remove all 4 of those. We should now be able to push that through. If we turn it back over. So we're getting a bit of a spaghetti-fied, but as you can see, that's the board we want. This one here. This board here. Might have to just trim or move a few wires. Unplug that one. That's probably in the way. Let's wrap around it. And hopefully we should now. There's this black wire here. Might have to just disconnect this black wire here. But I think you get the general picture anyway. So we can now get this board out. And then what we're going to do is put the meter across these switches and just make sure we've got continuity. I've now got this board out. What was holding it in was the headphone socket. You just need to push it down, lift it, and then you lift it back out. It just slides out. From the 3 wires here, I presume it's going through the volume control, the balance mixer, treble and the tone control. On this tone control board, I found 2 caps down there and 2 here. I've changed them. These 2 are reading quite strange values. I'll go and put those on a proper tester and I'll see what they come out as. But effectively we've only got the feed from the tone controls back to the amplifier board, and then the input from the preamp side of this board coming in on this side. So I've sort of traced out what I can see. Now I've just got to find there's 2 transistors. Just trace through one here and the other one is just there. Just got to check the data sheet on those. I know the transistors work, but find out where the preamp input signals come from the cassette deck. But I believe it's going to come back down to this board, which is the switchboard for it all. So I'm going to put this part back together along with these tone controls, because I've checked everything else on there. I've cleaned the pots, I've cleaned the switches, tested the switches, and they all seem to be okay. So I'll put that back together, and then we'll move down onto this bottom board and we'll start testing the switches on that board once I've found out where the input signals come from. Now it looks like these ones here come from the cassette deck, and probably the radios. These wires all lead back to this cassette deck board. Well, I just started looking through these switches, and this is your radio selection switch. So continuity there, press the button from the center, now move to the top, so that works fine. But if we go to the tape selector, we do it from this one, fine, nothing there, turn that off, there, so that's working fine. Select it again. Now with this one, it's a double switch, so we've got another center contact there, nothing there, and I've got continuity there, nothing there, continuity there, and we've just got to work our way along the whole line of switches just to try and find out which is faulty, if there is one. Going to this center contact, we should now have continuity there, and there's nothing. Test that one, and there is. So I think we've got an intermittent contact between there and there, because I've gone back and tested them all again, and now that's not working. So if I give it a bit of a wiggle, that side works. Now it's working, whereas just it wasn't. So I think we've got intermittency on this center contact to this pin, which is to do with the tape select, which isn't actually working, and then we've got this black ribbon cable feeding out. So I might have to set this switch off and see if I can have a look inside and see what's actually happening. Well, I checked this tape switch over a few times, resoldered everything. When I looked at dismantling it, it's all part of a switch mechanism, so I thought, I'll just try some contact cleaner first. And I've sprayed some contact cleaner into it from wherever I can get to, and it seems to have cured the problem at the moment. So we do seem to have continuity now when the button's pressed between this centre pin and this outer pin. And that's your switches and the linking mechanism, which all seems, I'd have to take the whole lot off really, and I'm not really. So all I've done, I've just sprayed down the gaps down here, wherever I can find a small hole, just some contact cleaner in there, and it seems to have cured the problem at the moment. So that's your radio, tape and phono, they all seem to be working okay. I've checked all the other wires, all the other switches, everything else seems okay. So I think it's now time to move on to this cassette deck board and I need to lift it up anyway to change the belt, so that'll probably be the next job now. Actually getting access to this and seeing how it lifts off. I'll put the unit back together, connected up the power supply on these leads onto this board, and the speakers onto the correct terminals, which are signposted here and on this side as well. And it's still got the same problems. Although now the cassette player is actually, the motor's running, there's no sound from it, so we can fast forward, rewind and play, but there's no sound. And I did find quite a bit of chewed up tape around with the capstan, so I don't know why, I was tapping the unit and I happened to knock the power switch and the unit went off, even though it was pressed in. And if I pressed it slightly to the left or to the right, the cassette motor would start up. So I took the power switch apart, which was a big mistake. Couldn't really get inside to clean the contacts, and it did seem like it was working for a bit after I'd sprayed it, but again, after a few times turning it on and off, I think there must be quite a bit of current travelling through that actual power switch. It seemed to build up quite a high resistance across the contacts. So what I've done, I've just bridged it out with a wire link. It's only it's 4 pins basically, and they've bridged them across the top and across the bottom. So it's effectively just switching the positive supply. And everything seems to be working now. As regards the LEDs are staying on, the radio doesn't sound distorted, so I think there just must have been quite a high resistance across that contact, creating quite a large volt drop across the whole board. Still got the cassette to sort out, that's still not playing yet, but I'm going to take that board off, change the belt and have a look at some of the capacitors and the transistors on that board. Need to have a look at getting this cassette board off now. There's only 4 screws that hold it on. There's 1 there. 2. 3. And that just simply lifts off. We can disconnect this orangey purpley wire, gives us a little bit more freedom. There's a nerve tag, if I spin that round. There's a nerve tag there we can disconnect. And just cut this cable tie off, I think. And we should then get access to everything that we need to. But what I'm going to do first, I'm going to have a look at the bottom of this board and see if there's any bad joints on it, and go through that first before we look at changing the belts. Well, I've got the board off and there is a preamp chip on there, and it's a LA3160, which I don't know if it's still available, but what I've done, there's some very basic circuit diagrams there, which this roughly follows, to be honest. So what I did, I traced out the lines from the input and the output to these common switches, and then I just did the normal on the outputs of it, just put my screwdriver on there and induce a little bit of mains hum, and it seems to be working both outputs. Did the same with the input, very low level, not sure if that was working or not. Well, we're slowly tracing through this board. We've wiped over all the solder joints, cleaned them all up, changed a few of the caps around the main preamp. And what I have found is that I've got no supply rail on pin 4 of the main preamp, which is an LA3160. I'll trace it back out. It comes across here and then up here and onto that pin, but seems to be a bit of corrosion on the copper there, and they're not making contact. So I'll zoom into that from here, which is just here. So I'm going to bridge these out and see if that helps. I've done a quick budge and I've just put these two link wires in for now, just there and there, check the continuity. We seem to have continuity now, so let's give it a test again and see if we get any sound out of it this time. Well, it's time for a test. As I say, the main power switch, I've had to put a wire link across so the unit is just permanently on now. What should be now set to radio.
Giving me a purpose.
And it sounds really nice now, no problem at all with that. And the cassette, I've created a test cassette which has got 430 Hz on it, 440 Hz on it, and a 1K tone. So if I now switch to cassette player, press play. And there's the test tone. Quite a little bit of wave and flutter on it, but I haven't changed the belt yet. So I will get round to changing that. But that's working now, so I'm really happy with that. So in summary, the main reason why the cassette wasn't working was just purely two of the tracks had corroded through. Now got to replace the belts. Once we've got the belts replaced, the unit's pretty much up and running, other than the power switch, which I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that at the moment. I'll just turn that down a bit. But yeah, new belt on there, and it should all be up and done. I've just got to then put it all back together. I'm going to look at doing the belt now. To get this board off, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws. Just get those out. And an awful lot of cutting of cable ties. Because I've had this board on and off, because I've been changing some of the caps on this board, mainly around this preamp section just here. It is quite loose now, and I have disconnected an awful lot of these wires that were all cable tied together. So you will need to do that. It's not the easiest board to gain access to, and what I want to do is disconnect these wires here. You probably wouldn't have to, but I want to make my life simple, so I'm going to disconnect the motor and these two switch contact wires so I can fold this over fully without it being in the way. You probably could gain access to the belt from here. Looks like we've just got to remove this plate, take the motor off, and we should be able to get to the belt then. But I'm going to try and make it as simple for myself as possible. I decided not to take the motor wires off. We should be able to just lift this up straight away just by removing the motor. So I think if we get this wire out of the way first, which has got this earth tag on it. Thank you. Take the screw off. Hopefully we should be able to gain access to the motor now. Maybe not. Oh, it looks like there's a screw underneath there as well, so we might have to lift the whole thing up to do that. Yeah, I think we need to set these screws out because we're going to change the tape counter belt as well. So we just loosen that one off. That one. And this bottom one. Hopefully this plate should lift away. And we've got access now to the tape counter belt. But hopefully we should also get access now to the motor, which doesn't seem to be happening. That screw seems to be holding this plate on. So I think a little bit more digging around and see what else we can find that we need to take off so we can just get access to the motor. It may mean that we disconnect this whole cassette unit from this chassis, this plastic black chassis. Might be the easiest way to do this. Well, that seemed to be the way to do it. There was just a screw there and a screw on there, which are on these metal plates here, which were just holding this into this black plastic chassis. and that's allowed us now to move everything away, and we can now just sort of get access to the belts, I think, far simpler. I'll work out to get the motor off. Have a look at this. But if you do notice, it does say on there Orion PST-1, so I'm just rebranded a Orion as an Amstrad. I've decided I'm going to take all these wires off. It's probably something you wouldn't have to do if you're doing this, but I'm going to make my life as simple as possible. So there's a switch wire there which switches on the motor. You've got white there and white and red there, which goes to the centre pin. I've labelled them up there, so but I think it'll just give me more room to just get this totally out of the way. It's just getting on my nerves at the moment, so because again it's a complete learning curve for me as well. Well, I've taken this board off fully. It comes right out of the way then. So we've now just got the motor wires loose and these loose. I can now get access to everything really I need to. And it looks like we're going to have to take this screw out here, which are all extremely tight. Let's just see what that one does. Has that loosened up the motor yet? It's getting looser. I've got to take this plate off. I'll put this temporarily back on. Okay, and the motor should now lift off, and there it is. There's just this little location lug just there. So we should now be able to get access to the belt, and hopefully, because I've lifted this edge up, we might be able to just lift the belt straight from underneath. So let's have a quick look at that without doing any more dismantle, and there it comes. Now that's the belt. I'll see if I've got something similar. If not, we'll have to get something on order. But it seems a lot of work just to change a belt, but it is what it is. I don't think Amstrad ever had the intention of you ever resurfacing these products really. They tended to do everything, so I think when it was worn out, you just put it in the bin and replace the unit. But we'll get a belt anyway, and we'll see if we can get that fitted, and then hopefully get it all back together. We've got the new belt on. Just basically slipped it back under there, over there, realign the motor, make sure this little lug relocates back onto this top bracket. Pretty simple to do, to be honest. And it's just really now a question of reassembly. I'm just going to do all that. It basically is the reverse of taking it apart. I've got to change the belt for the tape counter, but as soon as we get that back together as a full module, I'll show you how we fit it back in, and we're just going to put the belt on this part. Okay, so we've put the motor back on, we put the belts on, they'll seem to be okay. I've cleaned up the wires on the end of here to go back onto these terminals here. I've cleaned these wires as well, and we're just going to feed these through now and resolder them back onto there, and then it's just a question of dropping the board back over and screwing it down. Well, we've reattached the cassette deck back to the plastic chassis, and the two screws I was talking about, there's one just there, just here, and the other one is just down there, and you put those two screws back in and it holds it all back to the plastic chassis. The only thing left to do now is to put this board back in, tidy up the wiring, and then give it another test. Once we've got this screwed down, we then should be able to adjust the motor speed by there should be a small little variable resistor inside this hole here, and obviously we've changed the belt, so it may need a slight adjustment. I haven't got the original belts, I've just found something that's very close, so maybe a little bit of adjustment needed for that. We've got the board back on, there's 4 screws, locations are there, here, here, and just one under here. And obviously we checked to make sure that all the wires were free from underneath, and it's really now it's going to be a question of putting it all back together and tidying up these cables, and then maybe having a look again at this power switch, because I need to sort something out with it. I can't just leave a link to a wire across it, otherwise the unit will just be permanently switched on. It might be possible to swap one of the other switches with it, but we'll have a look. I've still got to tackle this mains power switch, and I believe the problem being, and it seems to be common with most Amstrad equipment, and I've seen a couple of other these on Google where the power switches falter, and I believe what it is that there's roughly over an amp travelling through there. There's an 18 volt feed from the power supply straight into this switch and back out, which powers the rest of the circuit, and I think the switch is underrated. So what I'm going to look at doing is replacing this switch, because this has got faulty contacts in that, with this switch. It's slightly smaller, it's only rated a maximum of 200 milliamps. You might be saying, well, that's not going to be any good, but what I've decided to do, I'm going to use that switch to turn on a relay board, which is going to then feed the high current through these three terminals. So looking at the circuit diagram, this switch that we've got, that's basically here, and this is a voltage regulator which is on this little board here, and a relay there rated at 5 volts, and that'll switch then the high current feed, which is either from the 12 volt socket, the batteries, or from the power supply, which is internal to the unit. And it's all very simple. I mean, effectively we're just going to switch this on, which will then, the 5 volt regulator will output 5 volts and energise the relay. In energising the relay, it'll close the contact and allow the 18 volt or 12 volt feed out to the radio. There is a sacrifice to be made for doing this. I mean, this small part of the circuit, this piece here, actually draws around about 30 milliamps, but it should hopefully cure this problem of the contacts on the main switch burning out all the time. So this is only a rough diagram anyway, and this is the circuit diagram here of this board. Effectively got your 7/805 regulator, the relay, and this switch, which is a HR810. I'm just going to disconnect that and link 3 to 4 effectively. So when I put this V in, I put a 12 to 18 volt signal in there. I mean, it can be less than that obviously. It'll output 5 volts, and then to switch the relay on, because effectively we're just shorting out across there, and then we can open and close the normally open, normally closed contacts. I could attempt to just get another switch, but I think the same problem is just going to end up occurring further down the line. So I think a better option is to use it this way. I've put a little bit of a network there just to limit any sparking across the relay contacts. Hopefully it should work. I've tested it. I've got 2 of these boards. I've tested the one board, disconnecting that as HR810 and linking it out, and then just running it up off my power supply, and then the board seems to work fine. Let's look at getting the switches back out. I've taken the boards off the back, so those are no problem at all with those. Basically we've got to take these 2 screws back out, desolder this wire, and then just undo those. There we have it. We now have access to this switch, which, as you can see, that's where I put the wire link across. We've just got to desolder these. I might have to either drill some holes or bend the pins on this, but I think that should fit in there just nice. Okay, next thing we'll do is bend these little tabs up, and then we should just be able to lift this switch off. hopefully. Maybe a little pricey lift out. And there we have it. There we have it, the switch. And now we're going to get that one into there, which looks like a perfect fit. So I'm just going to do that off camera because I'm going to need to bend these pins and check, because that's the common in the center, and I need to just verify which one I'm switching to and from. I'm going to have a look at servicing one of these switches. This is the original. That's now almost impossible to put it back together, but we've done it now. So let's try to see if we can lift this lid off. What I'm going to do, because I don't need this anymore, I'm going to make it easy for myself. I just want to show you what's inside it really. This is the mechanism anyway. So we've got a spring and this is the hard bit to get back on. It took me ages to get that sorted back out, but no, it still didn't work properly afterwards. So I'm just going to trim these off because I don't need them. I'll make it dismantle, and I don't know if you can see inside there at all. You can see the contacts. Let's see if we can just lever them off. Okay, let's try this screwdriver, see if this is any better. I think I'm going to end up damaged. Well, I think I have damaged it beyond repair. But we'll carry on so we can have a look and see what's inside it. And there we have it. So it may be possible to service it, I don't know. They're quite large contacts, so it is a high current rated switch by the look of it, but it just would not operate properly without sort of wiggling it to the left or to the right. But anyway, that gives you an idea of what's inside them. So if you do want to attempt to try and clean it, you've got an idea now. I'm just cleaning these contacts down there. Whether they would push out from that side better, I don't know. But the labelling on the back just says Japan Alps, APLS. Well, the bodge is complete. I've got that switch in place. I did have to do a little bit of filing on the metal frame. It weren't quite exactly the right size, but it does fit now. I've just got to reassemble it now, and then from where the two original wires, these ones here, came off the back of this board, I just need to bring out some smaller wires and then connect them into the control board. So I'll get it all put back together. I'm not going to show you doing that. It's only the reverse taking it apart, and as soon as we get to a point where we're going to connect the board in, we'll pick up from there. Okay, we've wired up this little board. I took that chip off down there, and I've just put a link across 3 to 4 to the bottom of that diode. And we've got the oranges here, so we've got the 18 volt feed in. This is the feedback to the switch, this red wire. A bit unfortunate, but I used sort of a black wire as the return, which is onto the 18 volts input, and this wire here just goes to a 0 volt reference on the board. So hopefully now this should work. Don't see any reason why it don't. I did test it with the power supply there prior to wiring it up, so well, let's see if it goes. Bang! I put all the modules back together, screwed everything up. I did take the power supply board out, it's just down the back down. It's far easier to work on like that. It's just stretching the wires across all the time. So what I'm going to do now, first test, I'm going to plug it in and see what happens. So let's give this a test. Let's just try this button. So we'll try the power button, see if it's actually working. And that seems to be working. Set to radio. And we've got the radio. Let's try the tape. Switch to tape. we should have our 430 Hertz test tone, which is working fine. So yeah, that seems to work fine. I'll turn that back down, it's annoying. So that seems to work fine. So we've got the module back here. It's not particularly set anywhere at the moment. I've got to tidy the wiring up for that, find a nice place to put it. But that seems to work. The relay's clicking in and out. I've run it for a small period off the power supply, and the voltage regulator doesn't get hot at all. It's just mildly warm, which I think will be fine. I did think that dropping from 18 volts to 5 might be an issue, but it doesn't seem to be. And as I say, that circuit will only come in when it's running off mains. It's not affected, so it's not powered up when we're running off battery or anything else. So it offers quite good isolation. The only way to run it off battery is the switch on the back of the unit. You switch it to mains or battery, which bypasses the mains input circuit. So yeah, that seems to be working now. So I seem to have corrected that issue. It's just a question now putting it back all together. Well, we've got the front put back on. I'm not going to show you doing all this. You can watch the first video, show you how to dismantle it. And it's all going back together quite nice. Still got to deal with this board yet. I'm sort of thinking of mounting it down here somewhere. I don't know. I might extend the leads and mount it somewhere else. Not too worried about it at the moment. It's just really a question of getting it all back together, getting the screws in. I seem to have one screw spare, which is nothing new in my life, but I'll find out where it goes eventually. But yeah, generally assembly is quite simple, and it's quite nice that it basically you assemble the front complete, and then it just drops into the back. I've got to put the power supply module back in, which is just here. I've got to resolder that back in, and then it's a question of finding a place for this and then dropping it back in. Once I've done that, we'll have a play and just make sure it's working okay. But it's quite simple to reassemble. I did a first video that shows how to dismantle the unit, so it's just the reverse of that really. So hopefully we can get it all back together now and it should work. Let's find out. Also got the clock working, just put a battery in that. It's just a AA cell on the back. That seems to work fine as well. Well, it's all back together. Simple enough. 5 screws, put it back together, put the speakers on. This tape player, the remove one, I haven't had to do anything to that. It's actually playing the right speed, everything. It was just that the power supply was missing from the actual main unit. The cassette player's working fine now. We checked slow on it, but it was a sign of quality in the good old days. I think it's a bit too slow. That might need addressing. The only thing I've got left to do is probably clean that speaker out. I didn't do that one, I've done that one. But everything else is working now. Radio's working. Switch it to FM radio. That's working fine. Sounds really nice actually. I mean, I think Amstrad got a bargain here with this Orion. Basically, it's very well made. They don't just screw into plastic. There's bushes, brass bushes that it screws into. So it's very well made, really, to be honest. I think Amstrad felt lucky just putting their badge on this one. But yeah, generally everything's working now. We've got rid of all the interference. The power button's working fine now, so we can turn the unit on and off. Everything else, got rid of all the interference noise. The tape's playing at the right speed. So yeah, it's just another one to go in the collection.